It was a Saturday morning in early June, a few weeks after my high school graduation. My friends were posting photos of acceptance letters and campus tours, all smiling and planning dorm decorations. I'd been holding off on committing to a university until I confirmed that my college fund, the one my grandparents started for me when I was little, was still in place. It wasn't an extravagant fund, but it represented everything I had worked toward. The late nights studying, the summers mowing lawns, the careful saving of birthday money, the quiet hope that I'd one day be the first in our family to graduate from a 4-year college debt-free. But that morning, everything changed. My mom and dad called me into the kitchen. They were sitting at the table side by side, their hands clasped, as if preparing for a family meeting. The kind of talk where you already know something's wrong. Dad started. "Honey, we need to talk about the college fund." Something in his tone made my stomach sink. "Okay, what about it?" Mom gave me that look, the one parents use when they're trying to sound reasonable but know they've crossed a line. "We had to make a tough decision," she said softly. "It was for the family." I blinked. "What do you mean, had to?" She hesitated. "We used it." My heart dropped. "Used it for what?" "For Lila's car. At first, I thought I'd misheard her." "You what?" Dad sighed like he'd rehearsed his next line. "Your sister needed reliable transportation. She's been doing so well in school, and with her new internship, she needs a car to get around safely. You'll understand when you're older. I was 17. I wasn't a child. I understood numbers, effort, and fairness. And what I understood in that moment was that my parents had taken away the future I'd been planning for years. That money was for college, I said, my voice shaking. Mom leaned forward. "We'll help you figure something out. You're responsible. You'll get scholarships. You've always been the independent one." That last sentence stung the most. They said it like independence was a compliment, like being left on my own was some kind of gift. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You took the money that was saved for my education. To buy Lila a car?" Dad crossed his arms. "Don't take that tone. She needs it. You can always work your way through school." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. "You realize that's almost $20,000, right?" "You didn't even tell me before you did it," Mom sighed. "You're making this sound worse than it is. We'll help when we can. Family supports family." That phrase, family supports family, burned into my memory like a brand. In that moment, I realized something fundamental. In our family, support seemed to flow in only one direction: Lila's direction. Ever since we were kids, she'd been the golden child. The one who got new clothes because she's growing. The one who got out of chores because she's still learning. The one whose mistakes were brushed off with, "She didn't mean it." Meanwhile, I was the dependable one. The helper. The problem solver. The one who could handle it. But this wasn't a small oversight or a forgotten promise. This was years of trust, savings, and planning, wiped away for a car with a ribbon on it. I remember standing there, staring at them, feeling the kitchen spin a little. The clock ticked. The air smelled faintly of toast, and outside I could hear Lila laughing with her friends in the driveway. I finally said, "You didn't even ask me." Mom's voice softened. "We didn't want to upset you. It just made sense at the time." "Made sense to who?" I whispered. Dad's patience snapped. "Enough. We did what we had to do. You'll figure something out. You're smart. You'll land on your feet." And that was the end of the discussion. I went upstairs, shut my door, and sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. My hands were shaking. I wasn't angry, and not yet, just hollow. Like someone had pressed delete on everything I'd been working toward. An hour later, I heard the rumble of an engine outside. I looked through the window and saw it. A shiny, brand-new blue sedan parked in the driveway. Lila was jumping up and down, squealing with joy as Dad handed her the keys. Mom snapped a few pictures, cheering, "Your first car! You deserve it, sweetheart." I watched from behind the curtain, too stunned to move. The car glinted in the sunlight, polished, perfect, spotless. And all I could think was, that's my tuition gleaming in the driveway. When she saw me at the window, Lila waved. "Isn't it awesome?" she shouted. I closed the curtain. That night, I packed away my college brochures. I still planned to go, but I knew then that whatever future I built would be without their help. I made a quiet promise to myself. I would never rely on people who saw my effort as expendable. I would find a way, even if it meant working 3 jobs and skipping every family dinner until I was free. In the years that followed, I kept that promise. And the irony? That car they bought for Lila, the one that cost me my college fund, ended up costing them far more than they ever expected, because years later, when life came full circle, I became their landlord, and when they asked if I could cut them a deal, I handed them the same phrase they once used on me: family supports family. Only this time, the meaning was entirely different. After that day, something inside me shifted, quietly, like a door closing in my mind that I knew would never open again. Before all of this, I'd always believed my parents were fair people. Strict, yes. Practical, definitely. But fair. We weren't a family that talked about feelings much. But I always thought we had this unspoken agreement. If you worked hard, did the right thing, and kept your promises, things would work out. That illusion disappeared with one sentence. We used it for Lila's car. I spent the rest of that summer in a daze, trying to make sense of what had happened. I avoided family dinners, spent most evenings at the library or working at the grocery store, and kept my distance from Lila, who was far too busy showing off her new ride to notice my silence. She'd pull into the driveway, music blasting, singing along to pop songs like she was in a music video. Every time I heard that engine, it felt like a reminder of everything I'd lost. Mom would wave from the porch, smiling like life was perfect. "Isn't it nice seeing her so independent?" She'd say, independent. That word almost made me laugh. My sister's version of independence was asking Mom for gas money and Dad for insurance help. But I kept my mouth shut. The college brochures I'd once kept neatly stacked on my desk were now shoved into a drawer. I still planned to go, but I knew the road would be steeper. So I started planning obsessively. I met with my school counselor to explore scholarship options. I applied for every small grant and part-time job I could find. I learned how to stretch a paycheck until it squeaked. My friends talked about moving into dorms and decorating their rooms. I talked about balancing shifts at the grocery store with online classes and night school. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. Still, I couldn't shake the sense of betrayal. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what it meant. My parents had made a choice, and their choice said, "Your sister's comfort matters more than your future." I remember one night, a week before I was supposed to start community college, sitting in the kitchen with my dad. He was paying bills while watching the news. I decided to ask one more time just to see if they'd changed their minds. "Dad," I said carefully, "if I find a school that offers a transfer program, do you think you and Mom could help with tuition, even just a small loan?" He didn't look up. "We can't afford it right now." "But you could afford the car." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "We already talked about this." "Don't start again. That car was a necessity." "For her," I muttered. He shot me a sharp look. "Watch your tone. You're not the only one with needs in this family." That was the moment I realized we were speaking entirely different languages. In his mind, I was being selfish for wanting my own savings back. In mine, I was simply asking for fairness. After that, I stopped asking. I threw myself into work, stocking shelves, bagging groceries, doing small tech repairs on the side for neighbors. I saved every dollar. My friends joked that I was the most boring 18-year-old alive, but I didn't care. I had a goal now: freedom. When classes started, I biked everywhere because I couldn't afford a car. Rain, sun, wind, didn't matter. I'd ride 6 miles to campus, study in the library, then pedal straight to work. Some nights I didn't get home until past midnight. Mom would say, "You're pushing yourself too hard. You should take it easy like Lila." I'd just smile and say, "I'm fine," because deep down, I didn't want to be like Lila. I didn't want to live off someone else's sacrifices. Months passed. My grades stayed high and I earned a transfer scholarship. It wasn't huge, but it was enough to cover my first semester at a state university. I remember getting the acceptance email and just sitting there staring at it, tears blurring my vision. When I told my parents, Mom said, "That's great, honey, but are you sure you can handle that on your own?" I nodded. "I'll figure it out." They didn't offer to help, not even a congratulations card. But that was okay, because something inside me had changed for good. I no longer needed their approval. The day I left for the university, Lila was in the driveway polishing her car. She smiled at me, not unkindly, but with that casual ignorance that only people who've never struggled can have. "Good luck," she said. "Maybe you'll get one of these soon." I looked at her shiny blue car and said quietly, "Maybe." But what I was really thinking was, no, I'll get something better. I'll earn it. That day, as my old second-hand duffel sat in the trunk of a borrowed car, I took one last look at the house and the family I thought I knew. Then I closed the door on both. I didn't realize it then, but that decision, to walk away, to build my own life without bitterness, would become the foundation of everything that came next. Because sometimes the greatest revenge isn't a dramatic confrontation. It's succeeding quietly until the people who doubted you are the ones knocking on your door. And one day, that's exactly what happened. College wasn't easy, not even close. The first semester hit like a storm. Between morning lectures, evening shifts, and endless homework, I barely slept. Some nights, I'd fall asleep on the library couch with my laptop still open, only to wake up to an early class. While my classmates talked about weekend trips and family visits, I was juggling invoices for my freelance projects, building small websites for local bakeries, photographers, and even a few realtors. At first, I did it just to survive, but over time I realized I actually loved it. Creating something from scratch, seeing a small business come alive online, it gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in years. By the time I transferred to the university, I was managing over a dozen clients. My laptop became my best investment, and every dollar I made went into upgrading my gear or paying tuition early. Still, every once in a while, I'd get a call from home that made my stomach twist. It was always the same rhythm. First, a few minutes of small talk. "How are your classes? Are you eating enough?" And then the real reason they called would surface. One time, it was Mom saying, "Honey, your sister's car insurance went up. Could you maybe help her with the difference this month?" I paused mid-sentence. "You're asking me to pay for the car that replaced my college fund?" Mom sounded offended. "Don't make it sound like that." "We're all family here," I replied. "Family helps family, right?" Funny how that works. That was the first time I hung up before she could respond. From that point forward, I focused on my own path. I picked up an internship at a digital agency, unpaid at first, but it gave me valuable connections. Within 6 months, they started paying me as a junior web developer. I was proud, even if no one at home seemed to notice. When I graduated with honors 2 years later, I sent my parents an invitation to the ceremony. I didn't expect them to come, but part of me hoped they would. I wanted to believe we could still have a moment, some recognition that I'd made it despite everything. A week before the ceremony, Mom called. "Sweetheart, about your graduation," she began, sounding hesitant. I held my breath. "We're so proud of you, but we can't make it. Your sister just got an offer to spend a week at the coast before she starts her new job. We promised we'd take her." I didn't even reply. I just said, "Got it. Thanks for letting me know." The day of graduation, my roommate's parents hugged me tighter than my own ever had. They brought flowers and cheered from the stands. I smiled, but part of me broke a little more inside. Later that night, I scrolled through social media. There they were, my parents and Lila, smiling on a beach, sunglasses on, captions full of sunshine emojis. I stared at the photo, then closed the app. I'd officially learned to stop expecting anything from them. After graduation, things started to change fast. My internship turned into a full-time job, and within a year, I'd saved enough to move into a small but cozy apartment downtown. The business I'd started in college began to grow too. Word of mouth spread, and soon I had clients reaching out from other states. I worked hard, maybe too hard, but it paid off. For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about bills. I could treat myself to takeout without calculating every penny. I even bought a used car. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. One afternoon, I got a text from Lila out of the blue. "Hey, big bro, long time. My car's acting up again. You're good with computers and stuff, right? Can you fix engines too?" I replied, "No, but I know a great mechanic." She texted back a frowning emoji. Then, "Mom said you're doing really well. Maybe you could help me pay for it?" That message sat unread for a while. Then I typed one line. "I'm not your ATM, Lila." She never replied. A few weeks later, Mom called, frustrated. "Why are you being so cold to your sister?" "She's just asking for help," I said calmly. "Mom, you took my college fund to buy that car. I've already helped her more than anyone." Her tone hardened. "You'll regret holding grudges like this. Maybe I would have cared once." But by then, I'd learned that guilt is the favorite tool of people who can't face their own mistakes. Over the next few years, I built a small tech startup with a few friends from college. We specialized in helping small businesses transition to e-commerce. Perfect timing since everyone was moving online. We didn't have investors or fancy offices, but we had grit. And it worked. Within 2 years, we were making real profit. I finally had enough to start thinking long-term. Investments, real estate, even saving for early retirement. It was around that time that I heard through a family friend that my parents' financial situation wasn't so great. Apparently, Dad's company had downsized. He was out of work for a while, and they'd taken on a second mortgage years earlier to help Lila get started in her adult life, whatever that meant. Meanwhile, Lila had bounced between jobs, each one lasting just long enough for her to post a few pictures about new opportunities before quitting a few months later. She still had the same blue car. It was dented, faded, and barely running, but she'd named it Baby Blue, like it was some beloved pet. When I heard they were behind on mortgage payments, I didn't reach out. Not because I was happy about it, but because I knew if I did, I'd be dragged right back into being the responsible one. Still, I couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and irony. For years, I'd been the forgotten one, the afterthought, the kid who could handle it. And now, the very independence they'd forced on me had become my greatest strength. I didn't realize it yet, but life was about to come full circle. A few months later, I got a call from my mom again, but this time, her voice sounded different, tired, hesitant, almost humble. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly. "We've had some bad luck lately. Your dad's between jobs, and we might need to sell the house. It's just hard to keep up." I listened quietly. She continued, "We're not asking for money, but if you know anyone who might be interested in buying, could you let us know?" For a moment, I didn't say a word. I was standing in my office looking out the window at the skyline, the symbol of everything I'd built. Then I said, "Sure, Mom, I'll look into it." And I did. Just not in the way she expected. The first time I saw my parents' house listed online, I didn't believe it. There it was, my childhood home. The one with the maple tree out front and the faded blue shutters, sitting on a real estate website with bright photos and the words, "Charming family home in need of TLC." That line made me laugh out loud. In need of TLC, that house didn't just need repairs, it needed forgiveness. I clicked through the pictures, feeling a swirl of emotions I didn't quite know how to name. Nostalgia, sadness, maybe a touch of satisfaction. The worn carpets, the crooked kitchen cabinet my dad never fixed, even the dent in the garage door from when Lila backed her car into it. They were all still there, frozen in time, and yet something in me felt calm. I hadn't spoken much to my family in the past year. The calls had grown shorter, the texts less frequent. Every time we talked, money somehow came up. Someone needing a little help. Someone hinting that I was doing well enough to share. I used to feel guilty, but not anymore. When I heard the house was going up for sale, I didn't tell them what I was thinking. I contacted the listing agent quietly. Through my LLC, I made an offer. Clean, no contingencies. It was accepted within a week. A part of me expected to feel triumphant, like I'd won something. But when I signed the papers, all I felt was closure. I wasn't buying a trophy. I was buying peace. Still, I knew I'd have to face them eventually. A few days later, I got the call. Hey, honey, Mom said cautiously. You'll never guess, the house sold. We're so relieved. We were scared it would take forever. That's great, I said evenly. Do you know who bought it? Some company, she replied. They said it was for an investment property. Honestly, I'm just glad it's done. There was a pause. I could hear her shuffling papers in the background, then a long sigh. We're looking for a rental now, but it's hard. Prices have gone up so much. Everything's out of reach. I nodded silently, though she couldn't see me. That's when she asked, almost jokingly, You don't happen to know any landlords with a soft spot for a couple of empty nesters, do you? The irony nearly made me laugh. I might, I said. I'll see what I can do. 2 weeks later, I met them at the house, my house now. When they pulled up in their old SUV, I was already waiting on the porch. The look on their faces when they realized was something I'll never forget. Mom froze mid-step. Dad's jaw actually dropped. You? He said, eyes narrowing. You bought it? I nodded. Through my company. It's an investment. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Mom said quietly, We didn't know. I know, I said softly. You weren't supposed to. She looked around the yard, the one she used to garden in, and I could see the mix of pride and humiliation in her eyes. So what happens now? I took a breath. If you'd like to stay, I can rent it to you. Market rate minus a small discount. Dad's expression hardened. You'd really charge us rent? After everything? I met his gaze. After everything, yes. That's exactly why. He opened his mouth to argue, but stopped when he saw I wasn't angry, just calm, firm. Mom touched his arm, whispering, Let's just talk inside. We stepped into the living room. It looked smaller than I remembered. The walls were bare, the air smelled faintly of dust and lemon cleaner, the same scent from that day years ago when they told me the money was gone. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one, still scratched and worn, and I slid a folder across to them. Inside was a simple lease agreement. Nothing cruel, nothing excessive. Just professional terms, rent, due date, security deposit. Mom scanned it silently. Her hands trembled a little. This is fair, she admitted softly. Dad grumbled. I can't believe this. Our own son. I looked at him evenly. You're right, your son. The one who was supposed to use that college fund for his future. The room went quiet. For the first time in years, Dad didn't have a comeback. After a long pause, Mom sighed. We'll sign it, I nodded. I'll take care of maintenance and taxes. You just need to keep the place tidy. That's all. When I left that day, I didn't feel smug or superior, just peaceful. It wasn't revenge. It was balance. The next few months were interesting. At first, our relationship was awkward. Every rent payment came through the same online system as my other tenants. I treated them no differently. But slowly, the tension softened. Mom started leaving little thank you notes taped to the door after I sent maintenance crews. The faucet's fixed, thank you. Or, appreciate the new blinds. Small things, but they mattered. Dad was quieter. I'd see him in the yard sometimes, watering the grass, pretending not to notice me when I stopped by. It wasn't until one late afternoon in the fall that he finally spoke. I'd come by to check on some roof repairs. He was standing by the porch, arms crossed, watching the sunset. Without looking at me, he said, You've done well? I nodded. Tried to. He cleared his throat. Your mother told me you didn't gloat. You could have kicked us out. I wouldn't do that, I said simply. I just wanted things to be fair this time. He nodded slowly, his jaw tight. I get that now. We stood in silence for a while, the air cool and still. Then he added quietly, I'm sorry. About the fund, about how we treated you. I turned to look at him. He didn't meet my eyes, but his voice was steady. It was the first apology I'd ever heard from him. And though it came years late, it meant more than he probably realized. I appreciate that, I said. He gave a small nod, like that was all he could manage, and we left it there. But the real breaking point, the moment I finally felt free, came a few weeks later. Lila showed up. She came by one evening unannounced, parking her old blue car, the same one that had started it all, right in front of the house. I was in the middle of a work call when she rang the doorbell, smiling awkwardly. "Hey, big brother," she said. It had been over a year since I'd seen her in person. The car looked worse for wear, its paint faded, bumper scratched. She looked tired, too, not the carefree girl who used to breeze through life. We sat outside on the steps as the sun went down. She told me she'd been struggling, bouncing between jobs, barely making rent. She said Mom and Dad had been stressed, but proud that I'd stepped up. Then she hesitated. "I know you probably hate me." I shook my head. "I don't hate you, Lila. I just had to stop being the one everyone leaned on." She looked down. "I get that now. I thought Mom and Dad were doing what was best for everyone, but they kind of made a mess of things, huh?" I smiled faintly. "We all did in our own way." There was a long silence. Then she asked quietly, "Do you think you could help me find something stable? Maybe at your company?" I looked at her, weighing her words. She wasn't demanding it, just asking, humbly, honestly. "Maybe," I said. "If you're ready to work hard." She nodded, eyes glistening. "I am." For the first time, I believed her. That night after she drove off, I stood in the yard watching the taillights disappear down the street. The same car that once symbolized betrayal now represented something else entirely. Change. Growth. That was the moment I knew the past no longer owned me. Because real justice isn't about payback, it's about peace. And for the first time, I finally had both. After that autumn evening with Lila, something inside me settled. For years, I had replayed old conversations in my head. All the what-ifs, the maybe they'll change moments, the silent hopes that someone would finally say sorry. Now, I didn't need any of that. Owning the house wasn't revenge anymore. It was proof, not to them but to myself, that I'd survived what was meant to hold me back. I'd built a life entirely separate from their approval. Still, I wanted to make sure this chapter closed the right way. I called my property manager one afternoon and said, "We're going to put the lease in their names officially. No more verbal extensions, no family favors." He hesitated. "You sure you want to treat your parents like any other tenants?" "Yes," I said calmly, "because that's how I learned to treat myself. Fairly but firmly." So we did it by the book. The rent agreement was updated. A maintenance team came to fix what years of neglect had done. Leaky pipes, chipped paint, even that garage door Lila had dented. When Mom saw the work being done, she actually called me to thank me. "The place looks brand new," she said. "It's like the house is breathing again." I smiled a little. "That's the goal, to take care of it properly." Then she added almost shyly, "You've become so responsible. We're proud of you." Those words hit differently this time. I didn't crave them anymore, but they still mattered. Not because I needed validation, but because I knew they were finally genuine. Over the next few months, the roles continued to shift. Lila kept her word and joined my company in an entry-level position. She worked hard, really hard, and I made sure no one treated her differently because of who she was. I wanted her to earn respect, not borrow mine. There were moments when the past still flickered between us, like when we talked about budgeting. And she laughed, saying, "You were always the saver, even as kids." "Yeah," I said lightly. "Guess it came in handy." She smiled, a little embarrassed but sincere. "You're better at this whole adulting thing than the rest of us." I didn't rub it in. I just said, "You learn fast when you have to." A few months later, my parents invited me over for dinner, their first invitation in years. The table was set simply. No grand gestures, no awkward speeches, just homemade food and a soft attempt at normalcy. Dad poured water into my glass and said, "I've been meaning to ask, how's the company going?" "Busy," I said with a smile. "We're expanding. Probably hiring a few more people soon." He nodded, eyes proud but distant, like he was still trying to reconcile the man in front of him with the boy he once dismissed. Mom served lasagna and asked, "Do you ever get tired of it all?" "The responsibility?" "Sometimes," I admitted. but I'd rather carry my own weight than have someone else decide what I'm worth. That made her pause. She set down her fork slowly, her voice quiet. We did that to you, didn't we? I didn't say anything and just gave a small nod. She sighed. We thought we were doing what made sense at the time. But we weren't thinking about what it took from you. It's okay, I said softly. I've learned a lot since then. Dad cleared his throat, shifting in his chair. We see that now. You were right to draw your line. We just wish we'd seen it sooner. For the first time, I believed them. We spent the rest of the evening laughing about old stories. Harmless ones this time. Like how I once built a computer out of cereal boxes, or how Lila got gum stuck in her hair and blamed me. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. A few weeks later, I found myself driving past the house at sunset. The windows glowed warm, the yard was trimmed, and for the first time in years, the place looked like a home again, not a battleground. It made me realize something I hadn't understood before. Sometimes, justice doesn't look like winning. It looks like healing in your own quiet way while others finally learn to stand on their own feet. That's what this was. Not triumph. Not payback, but balance. But life has a funny way of circling back again. A year after they'd settled into the house, Dad called with news that surprised me. Your mother and I are thinking of selling, he said. Not because we have to, because we want to. The upkeep's getting harder and we'd rather simplify. Maybe travel a bit, I smiled. That sounds like a good plan, he chuckled softly. You've rubbed off on us. We're even looking at smaller properties, practical ones, within budget. I laughed. Who are you, and what did you do with my parents? He said something I'll never forget. We're finally learning what you learned years ago. Live within your means and take responsibility. When they sold the house, they did it the right way this time. No debt, no drama, no family manipulation. I helped them find a smaller place, nothing fancy but comfortable. The day they moved out, Mom handed me the spare keys. You really turned this house into something good again, she said. Not just for us, but for yourself, I nodded. That was the idea. Then she smiled faintly and added, maybe it's poetic. You lost your college fund, but somehow you built your own education. That line stayed with me, because she was right. I did get an education. It just wasn't the one anyone expected. That night, I stood in the empty living room one last time, the sound of my footsteps echoing softly against the floor. I thought about the version of me who once stood in that same kitchen, shocked and hurt as my parents explained that family helps family, and I realized something profound. Sometimes, helping family doesn't mean rescuing them. Sometimes it means showing them what accountability looks like, with kindness, not anger. Owning that house wasn't just about property. It was about rewriting what family meant in our story, from dependency to respect, from guilt to growth. As I turned off the lights and locked the door, I whispered to myself, that's enough. We're even now, and for the first time I truly meant it. Life felt quiet after that. Not empty, just calm in a way I hadn't known before. My parents sold the house, downsized to a modest townhouse across town, and actually seemed content. For the first time in decades, they weren't juggling payments or trying to impress anyone. They volunteered at the community center, took evening walks, even started budgeting, something I never thought I'd see them do. Mom would call sometimes, not to ask for money, but just to talk. How's work going? She'd ask, genuinely curious. She'd tell me about the gardening club she joined, or how Dad had finally learned to cook something that wasn't from a box. It was small talk, but for us, it was a big step. And then there was Lila. If you'd told me 5 years ago that my sister would become one of the most reliable people at my company, I would have laughed. But she did. She started at the bottom, admin work, scheduling, helping with client files, and worked her way up. She didn't get special treatment, and to her credit, she never asked for it. One day, she came to my office holding a stack of folders. We landed that marketing client, she said, smiling proudly. I think we're growing faster than you expected. I grinned. Maybe I underestimated us. She leaned against the doorway. You know, I used to think you were just lucky. Like everything just worked out for you. But now I see you just didn't stop. You kept going even when it was unfair. I looked at her and said quietly, luck had nothing to do with it. I just didn't want to live waiting for someone else to save me. She nodded, thoughtful. Yeah, I get that now. There was no bitterness left between us. Just understanding. The kind that comes from scars healed over time. A few months later, I visited my parents at their new place. It was smaller than the old house, but tidy and full of life. Dad had built a little workshop in the garage, and Mom had herbs growing on the windowsill. As soon as I stepped inside, I noticed something framed on the wall by the dining table, an old photo of me at my high school graduation. I hadn't even known they'd kept it. Mom saw me looking at it and smiled. We didn't go that day, she said softly. But we've always been proud. We just didn't know how to show it. I smiled back. You're showing it now. We sat down for dinner, just the three of us. No tension, no guilt, just a simple meal and the quiet comfort of people who had finally learned how to listen to each other. Halfway through, Dad cleared his throat. I wanted to tell you something, he said, his voice low but steady. I got a part-time job. Nothing big, just helping out at the shipping yard. It feels good to work again. That's great, Dad, I said sincerely. He nodded. I realized I spent so many years trying to look like I was in control, even when I wasn't. But you didn't pretend. You just did the work. That's something to be proud of, Mom added softly. We learned that from you. That line hit me deeper than I expected. For years, I'd carried the weight of their choices. The unfairness, the loss, the anger. But sitting there in that small kitchen, hearing my parents speak with humility and peace, I realized something profound. They weren't the same people who'd taken my college fund. And maybe I wasn't the same person who lost it. People can change. Not overnight, not perfectly, but gradually, in the quiet spaces where regret meets understanding. Later that evening, after dinner, Mom walked me to the door. You know, she said, when we gave Lila that car, we thought we were doing what good parents should, helping our kids succeed. We just picked the wrong moment to be generous. I smiled gently. It's okay, Mom. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have learned how to take care of myself. And honestly, I like the person I became because of it. She reached out and squeezed my hand. We do too. That was the closure I didn't even know I needed. On the drive home, I passed by the old house one more time. It had been renovated by the new owners. Fresh paint, new windows, a well-kept yard. It looked beautiful, but it didn't hurt to see it anymore. I wasn't attached to the walls or the past. The lesson it gave me was enough. As I stopped at a red light nearby, I caught sight of something that made me laugh quietly. A young couple standing in their driveway, holding keys, smiling like they'd just bought their first home. The man was about my age when everything had fallen apart. For a second, I saw my younger self in him, hopeful, untested, believing life would go according to plan. And I felt a quiet gratitude that it hadn't, because sometimes the broken plans lead you exactly where you need to be. Years later, whenever people ask me how I became successful, I never mention the company or the money. I tell them about the kitchen table conversation that changed everything. The day I learned that fairness isn't guaranteed, but self-respect is always worth fighting for. I tell them that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it means choosing peace over bitterness. And I tell them that the best kind of justice doesn't humiliate anyone. It teaches them. That's what happened to my family. We all learned, in our own imperfect ways, that love without respect isn't love at all. It's dependency disguised as care. Now we're not perfect. We still have our quirks and awkward moments, but we're finally a family built on honesty, not hierarchy. And if I could go back and tell my 17-year-old self anything, I'd say this. They might take your fund, but they can't take your future. You'll build that yourself, one hard-earned step at a time. Looking back now, I realize the story was never really about money. It was about value, not the kind that sits in a bank account, but the kind that lives in how you treat yourself and others. For a long time, I thought fairness meant equality, that everyone should get the same chance, the same support, the same help. But life taught me something deeper. Fairness isn't about equal treatment. It's about earned respect. My parents didn't mean to hurt me. They made a choice out of fear and favoritism, not cruelty. But their decision forced me to grow in ways they couldn't have imagined. I learned that boundaries don't make you cold, they make you stable. They protect your peace and remind others that love is a two-way street. And maybe that's why, even after everything, I could forgive them. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending it never happened. It means letting go of the need for repayment. It's saying, you don't owe me anymore. I've already found my own way forward. I don't regret losing that college fund anymore. If anything, it was the best unintentional lesson I ever received. It taught me that hard work and self-belief are stronger than resentment, and that sometimes the people who hurt you the most are the ones who help you discover who you truly are, even if it's by accident. When I see my parents now, I don't see the people who betrayed my trust. I see two flawed human beings who finally learned that love without accountability falls apart. And when I see my sister, responsible, kind, finally standing on her own, I see proof that change is possible. Maybe that's what poetic justice really looks like. Not revenge, not humiliation, but growth. Steady, quiet, earned growth that changes everyone involved. I've come to believe that every person will face a college fund moment in their life, a time when someone takes something you worked hard for, and you have to decide whether to sink in anger or rise in self-respect. So if you're in that place right now, if you've been wronged, underestimated, or left behind, remember this: you don't need to get even. You just need to get grounded. Build your peace, not your bitterness, because one day, you'll look back and realize that the greatest victory isn't proving anyone wrong, it's proving yourself right. And that's what I did. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that fairness starts with how you value yourself, and that sometimes the best kind of karma is simply becoming the version of yourself that no one thought you could be. What about you? Have you ever had to rebuild trust? Or learn to stand on your own after someone let you down? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this speak to you, about growth, family, and quiet justice, make sure to follow for more.